right, thousands of drones all over Shenzhen is an understatement. Look at how intricate and how many drones are putting together this light show. That is blowing my mind, and that is just fascinating. Let's appreciate the beautiful and complex diversity of the human mind. Katrina Paulson's back. We're going to be talking about neurodivergence, and why it really seems like 2026 might be the year we should view authenticity as refreshing and go back to being fascinated by society's black sheep and embrace quirkiness. I want to touch on the TikTokification of attachment theory. This is a scientific lens attachment theory that actually really does help understand people, especially if you've ever been on a dating app. It's like pretty much all avoidance, FYI. But I got a lot of good feedback from people in the last video that were saying that things like gaslighting are taken out of context on social media, and I think attachment theory is the same, so we'll look at it. But of course, we're always going to talk about AI, and this week, some big news. AI has uncovered 360,000 DNA knots. So these are a little bit different from the histones that we've talked about before that wrap around DNA to make it read different, but they do quietly shape how genes are turned on and off. So once again, we just find more and more layers to what makes life work the way it does. I'm not sure if you actually believe AGI can happen, but some people don't, or they always say like we're going to keep moving the goalposts. But this article, yes, AGI can happen, a computational perspective, makes some of the myths much more practical. So next time you drive through some city and it's completely dominated by gigantic racks of servers, just know that the computations that they're doing are helping AI-driven software enable better and more efficient parking space planning. Yeah, imagine going to the busiest part of your town and actually finding a parking spot soon. It's not AGI, but it makes shopping easier. Turns out there's a single voice command that can expose a humanoid robot to straight up hijacking. Legit, there could be a future where you walk up to a humanoid robot, whisper something to it, and like an LLM jailbreak, you can control it. That would have seemed so silly if it was in a movie, but it's actually probably going to be a weakness. Can you solve this Zelda puzzle in your mind right now? Think 6 steps ahead, because AI can. And that was pretty shocking to some smart people. Okay, I've heard you in the comments. Everybody wants to hear about the mystery of inertia. What is inertia? Inertia. Don't worry. I'm aware that it's stranger than gravity. I wanted to talk about a really interesting moment in the newest Coffeezilla video, where he talks about this micro-targeting that's AI generated to get people to like sign up for debt consolidation. I won't go into like that part of it, but look at this.
This was the specific micro-targeting of vulnerable groups and optimizing it, like using dozens of AI-generated variations to optimize engagement. There's something so uniquely dystopian about that in a way that it just couldn't have existed 10 years ago. Like, take, for instance, this ad, which is someone talking about their personal experience.
We'll touch on 3 philosophical debates from the 20th century that neuroscience is totally reshaping. And of course, what it means for ethics to have a whole bunch of mini brains, like actual neurons from what could be humans or other animals, put together, computing and potentially thinking, waking up and becoming alive. Organoids that compute is like something we got to start dealing with. But first, let's check in on how many hype presses I got on my last video. And yeah, it wasn't, you know, I'm not complaining about my life, but it wasn't as many as I hoped. The goal was to get maybe 200 hypes and 200,000 hype points. Came in a little bit short of it, so maybe in this video we'll get it. But if you do want to support this channel, hit the hype button on YouTube. All right, we'll start with a quick drone light show. I can't even estimate how many drones this took to keep organized. Questionably, might even be AI created. God knows anymore. But if it's real, which I think it is, I'm leaning towards it being real. It's amazing that kind of coordination could exist. It's sort of fun, I guess, this is what the world looks like, but these could just be zipping down the road delivering packages soon. This could be obviously tuned for war. This could just be a whole different world. Like, we've seen stop lights where drones like this pop out and then they can chase you down and give you tickets. Just drone everything. Get ready for it. Dude, check out this comment. What's wild is if you think about each drone as a pixel and then the fact that they constantly become cheaper to make drones, Then one day you can have like a full hologram, a 40-foot tall three-dimensional TV screen that will consist of so many drones that you'll see it as an HD image from a certain distance. Dang, he's not wrong. If you had flying pixel size LEDs and they could just do anything in your house. So I don't know if I'm just going through a phase. Maybe I've been listening to a lot of David Shapiro and he's talking about neurodivergence a lot. But I'm maybe just in this world of AI starting to have like a lot more appreciation for people who think really differently. And even if it's all the way to a place where they call it on a far end of the spectrum for ADHD or autism, I'm finding myself more and more fascinated with uniquely functioning brains. I know that sounds weird, but just maybe they're sometimes more creative. Sometimes they're not even creative, but they're just such a force of repetition. I find it fascinating. Because when you look out, neurodivergence sort of becomes almost like a preview of how intelligence itself is evolving, especially as AI enters the picture. I feel like some of the kind of uniquely tuned narrow AI systems might look a little bit like someone with autism. It's just kind of noticing these crazy details, but it might not be generally doing everything you expect it to. But I don't know. I know we're kind of on this adventure together. We're trying to expand our definitions of intelligence as we see more and more examples from protein folding or finding structural cracks in bridges. But as AI reshapes work, education, creativity, society, we're going to be forced to confront the truth that we've kind of long avoided. And we have avoided because it hasn't been profitable. We haven't built education systems for this. And that is that average minds don't actually serve everyone as well in the future. When we have AGI, the edge cases are going to be the special ones. So embrace your weird side, All right, next up, let's talk about the TikTokification of attachment theory. Laura Pitcher put together a beautiful blog article, thoughtful kind of understanding that explains how a once complex psychological framework about how humans form emotional bonds has been, we're going to argue, oversimplified and reshaped by social media, but also kind of promoted to a place where a lot more people are interested in it and contributing to the real science. So mixed bag here, I'll cover both sides. But TikTok completely ran with attachment theory. And it's a tool I've found personally pretty helpful for understanding some people and the relationships I've had in my life that haven't made a ton of sense until I thought through this oversimplified version. But it's a great starting point if you hadn't heard of it before. But think of the people, and this is something that can be built into them from their childhood in your life that might be secure, or they might be avoidant, or they might be anxious, or they can kind of be this like weird combination of both, like wanting to run away and be super attached, and they're kind of back and forth with all this fear. Now, I first learned about it from an audiobook. It was called Attached, and I do recommend it. It's more scientific than most things. It's not like just a blog or something like that. It's a real scientist, but she introduced the anxious, avoidant, and secure attachment styles, but now it's become this catch-all label that young people are using to define themselves and others in dating culture. And rather than fostering like a deep understanding, the online trend often reduces attachment styles into fixed identities, fuels judgment, and offers a too quick fixed solution that ignores real nuance and development roots of attachment theory. But here's the thing, attachment styles did not go viral on TikTok to help women heal. It went viral for lazy people to diagnose and dismiss. The uncomfortable truth is that TikTok didn't just oversimplify attachment theory, it made emotional complexity feel optional, especially in dating, and it gives us permission to walk away feeling psychologically justified instead of emotionally honest. All right, next up, let's talk about DNA knots. There's always another layer to the body that describes what you could need to understand to predict anything that it does. It just blows my mind. But scientists have now used artificial intelligence to create the first complete map of tiny, fleeting DNA structures called quadruplets. But it's easier to just think of them as knots in the genome that help control how genes are turned on and off. So what are quadruplets, I'm sure you're asking? Well, these are four-stranded shapes of DNA that act like landmarks that glue gene-regulating proteins together. Now, because they appear and disappear super quick, like they're not like histones where they stay or they're static, they're just popping on, messing things up, kind of making things work differently. and then just falling apart right after. So that's why traditional lab tools couldn't map them very well, but researchers have retrained a genomic AI model called DNA-BERT to predict where they form. And the result is they found 360,000 of these quadruplex sites across the human genome, and it blows my mind. A bunch of them are stopping, adjusting, enhancing gene activity in healthy cells. This is actually just part of a healthy human, and we've never really been able to see it or map it before. And there could be all sorts of hidden stuff in this, specialized things that they can find that relate to cancer, that relate to tissue that functions, that can be reprogrammed to stem cells, to targeted therapies. It's just crazy that we have these DNA knots that we've never seen them before, and now AI is opening up this whole new area of research. Next up, let's go to a blog. It is called Yes, AGI Can Happen, A Computational Perspective. This is the author, Dan Fu, and he breaks this post into these three main points. Today's AI systems are extremely underutilized. Model quality is a lagging indicator of a hardware build-out. We'll talk about this one in a second. This is a bit of a flip from what I normally think. And how far away is real, useful AGI? So I'm not sure what changed, but it seems like at least a lot of you guys in the comments who were kind of with me more when, I mean, I'm still kind of a doomer, but I haven't been talking about it as much recently. We're sort of like, yeah, AGI can happen, AGI can happen. And now there's all this narrative that is AI in a bubble and is AGI actually possible? And I haven't wavered on this at all. I totally think it's already here or it's really close. My definition of AGI feels like generally AI can do all sorts of things I can do, but better. And I know it's not embodied. So let's go look at the countdown, right? This is Alan's conservative countdown to AGI. I feel like this is a pretty good, we're 96% of the way there to him. The fact that I can talk to something and it feels like a human, especially with the form factor of ChatGPT in voice mode or Grok in voice mode or whatever, it just seems like there's a person that I'm chatting with on the phone that is more intelligent and can generally say and think in a way that almost nobody can, nobody can, like answer any kind of question. To me, that's very generally intelligent. And Steve Wozniak might go, okay, that's got to be a robot that can walk into a house that it's never been into before and like make a cup of coffee. All right. By that definition, maybe we're not there. But Dan Fu is arguing that the common narrative that AI progress is hitting a hardware wall is misleading. And that is because modern systems underutilize existing chips. So training runs often use only about 20% of the available computation and inference, often even much less, meaning that there's a ton of performance headroom still untapped with smarter software-hardware integrations. He also notes that many current models were trained on older hardware, and the capabilities of the newest massive GPU clusters that haven't even yet been fully utilized or exploited is going to blow our mind once they get that up and running. So the bottleneck for progress isn't just raw hardware power. We know that's coming online, trillions of dollars of it in the next couple of years. But it's also in how effectively we use the hardware that we already have, and instead of just chasing bigger chips, optimizing software, kernel libraries, all that stuff, it reframes AGI timelines. Progress isn't purely about waiting for faster hardware, it's about engineering smarter systems today. Meaning that some of the breakthroughs, they're probably already out there. Like the systems are in place that can do them, maybe even the papers are on archive. It's just about gluing it all together. But that does kind of mean AGI is here. It just hasn't been productized and given to us yet. So some German researchers have developed a new AI-driven software system that automates the mapping of city streets widths and parking space availabilities. I mean, it's kind of a obvious thing to build a system for, but also somebody had to build it, and these are the people that did it. So they used geo-referenced images and 3D point cloud data, and instead of manually measuring streets, which is, a slow, expensive, and inconsistent process, the solution uses machine learning and geometric methods to quickly identify curbs and calculate usable space across an entire urban street network. This means city planners can figure out much more accurately how many parking spots are available and design parking plans much faster and more accurately and more efficiently, helping make transportation planning more efficient and sustainable. But yeah, this could reduce traffic, give you more parking spots, less carbon. A bunch of jobs were just out there doing like manual measuring of street spaces and all this stuff that can be done computationally now. So way more efficient, way smarter, and hopefully leads to more livable cities. All right, so this is pretty wild. I guess we should assume that it will get patched and that guardrails will be put in. But on the other hand, I also know how effective prompt injections are. And still to this day, there are hacks, there are prompt injection hacks for the newest versions of Gemini and ChatGPT and Claude. So hopefully there's like some programmed overrides that kind of supersede this stuff, or some of this interpretability stuff can be like utilized before humanoid robots at mass scale are deployed. But if they're listening to people like the same way your ChatGPT app could be, you might be able to hack one of these robots in the near future by talking to it, by whispering something into its ear. Yeah, I kid you not. Researchers in China recently showed at a security conference that today's AI-driven humanoids and quadruped robots can be hijacked through basic flaws in their software communication systems. In one live demo, a hacker took over a humanoid robot with just a whispered voice command and then used short-range wireless connection to infect other nearby machines. Imagine one of these robots delivering a package from Amazon and you just like whisper into its ear and then it's under your control. And he was even able to do this to some of the humanoid robots that were not connected to the internet. So he effectively turned them into a system that could spread botnets through compromised robots. What? So the puzzle involves flipping the colors of orbs based on specific rules, and top-tier models like GPT-5.2 thinking reliably solved it every time. Surprisingly, the top-tier Gemini 3 model could solve it, but not nearly as well as GPT 5.2. It required long trial and error attempts. And Claude Opus 4.5 couldn't even do it, not until they got extra guidance. So 5.2 won, but the test still shows that modern AIs can perform structured forward planning and do it with not just visual cues, but generating language. So this suggests that you can combine reasoning skills with autonomous game-playing agents, and we could eventually replace human-written game guides to how to succeed in a game. But yeah, so for all the people who argue it's just like a parroting things back to us that it read on the internet from training data, I think this is pretty good evidence that it's internally simulating future steps and problem solving. There is something magical in the latent space. All right, look. Peter Rapota is going to talk to us about the mystery of inertia. I know you think inertia is kind of understood, but no. It's stranger than gravity, fact. All right, so like this bucket example explains everything. So here on the left, imagine just somebody holding a bucket, it's not spinning. And then this other one, halfway filled with water. This other person is spinning the bucket, and you know what would happen? The water would climb up the walls and it would kind of dip down in the middle. You've seen this kind of toilet-like effect with water a million times. But in this case, it's just from the bucket spinning. The atoms in the bucket are spinning and they're kind of grabbing the edges and starting to spin the water. Or are they? The weird and important question is, why does water know that it's spinning at all? If you think about it, is it spinning relative to the bucket or relative to the rest of the universe? Now, Newton said that it must be rotating relative to, quote, absolute space, some invisible background that defines motion. And then later thinkers questioned that and asked, if there were no stars, there were no galaxies, there was nothing else in the universe, would the water still curve? This experiment isn't really about buckets or water. It's about what motion means and whether inertia comes from space itself or from everything else in the universe pushing back. Yeah, I was shocked. This remains one of physics' deepest puzzles, perhaps even more mysterious than gravity to many people. And there really isn't any experiments, I guess, that explain why inertia exists in the first place. There's inertial mass, which is resistance to acceleration, and there's gravitational mass, how strongly something is pulled by gravity, and they're mysteriously equal in experiments. Yet there's no convincing explanation for this. Let me know in the comments if you know the answer. All right, let's talk about this latest Coffeezilla video. Now, like a lot of his videos, this is a video about a scam that you basically like Instagram ads are targeting people, getting them to like get debt consolidation. I won't go into what the video is a different topic. It's interesting in its own right. But what the micro targeting using artificial intelligence that allows this industry to tailor messaging, the way people are talking in a way that just feels 100% real. This is a lot of people hearing a message that's just built for them, or it's A/B testing thousands of different versions until it gets the optimal clicks. And look at how sophisticated this scam has become.
Okay, look, beyond the insanity of running ads with fake government headlines, what bothered me about this was the specific micro-targeting of vulnerable groups and optimizing it, like using dozens of AI-generated variations to optimize engagement. There's something so uniquely dystopian about that in a way that it just couldn't have existed 10 years ago. Like, take, for instance, this ad, which is someone talking about their personal experience getting out of debt.
Trust me, I know what it's like. I racked up 4 of my credit cards to more than $30,000.
But imagine an AI version that says 10,000, 40,000, that has a different woman standing at a different angle, targeting a different audience that sees themselves in her more. This is crazy.
But here's how I got it canceled.
Yeah, except that's totally fake. There are dozens of these ad variations, which means they're somehow optimizing for click-through rate to see which of their fake stories works better. Like, is it the one with the girl, the guy, the black person, the white person? And what struck me is just for all this industrial scale fakery and lying, there is an industry behind all of this, endorsed by celebrities. It's very real, it's very profitable, and it's often predatory, but basically no one knows how it works because most of it is run in the dark with these ads. And the videos that do explain debt settlement are usually trying to sell you on debt settlement.
All right, next up, let's talk about the 3 philosophical debates from the 20th century that neuroscience is reshaping. So this was published in Think Big. And the article explains how modern neuroscience is reshaping 3 classic 20th century philosophical questions by grounding them in how the real brain works rather than in abstract thought alone. It looks at free will, and it shows that brain activity isn't clockwork, determinism, but it is a probabilistic, embodied process that makes room for something like agency. Wow, it's kind of hard to say that because I'm sort of someone who doesn't believe much in free will, but interesting point. Anyway, another topic out of the 3 is the existential search for meaning, reframing it as a byproduct of how the brain constructs experiences and coherence. And for the 3rd one, the nature of self, showing that brain networks like the default mode network help create our sense of I, and that altering those networks with psychedelics or clinical conditions in other ways changes how the self feels from the inside. So instead of dissolving these deep puzzles, neuroscience forces us to rethink where they live, the dynamic, the biological workings, and how the brain itself constructs them. So yeah, neuroscience doesn't just provide data, it reframes what we're even asking when we talk about free will, meaning, the self. And that's cool because, yeah, traditional philosophy had to think of these as abstract concepts, but now we can say, like, okay, there's this physical process. Like, what can we study and influence to know? Especially that stuff about the sense of self, like, that's crazy. I mean, psychedelics changing how it feels to be an I from the inside. You hear people talk about ego death and all that. Like, yeah, there's something wild going on there. All right, and then let's address what's kind of the weirdest, one of the weirdest things that I'm trying to like get my head around and try to get comfortable with in the future is organoids, like human brain chunks just sitting in some kind of a structure, being maybe conscious, maybe not, computing, doing AI type stuff. So Singularity Hub published this. Shelby Fan is the author. 5-year-old mini brains can now mimic a kindergarten's neural wiring, and it's time to talk about the ethics. So here's the facts. Scientists now have grown brain organoids. They are tiny clusters of human brain tissue grown from stem cells for up to 5 years in the lab. And as they mature, these little mini brains develop neural wiring and activity patterns remarkably similar to what you'd see in a kindergarten-aged child's cortex. I don't know, but it totally threw me off reading this. So yeah, originally, these mini brains were just valuable as 3D models for studying the brain development and disease, but organoids have now become advanced with layered structures, different architectures, diverse cell types, and even blood vessel-like features, making them powerful tools for researching disorders like autism and also for computing. thinking, learning, growing. And as their complexity rises, so do the ethical questions about whether such organoids could one day experience sensations like pain or some form of consciousness. How would we even know? What are the ethical frameworks? Who should govern their use? Write your opinion in the comment section. I would love to hear it. And while you're there, don't forget to hype the video. Bye.